Hi and welcome to my channel today. Today we're going to talk about aluminium chassis and what's the difference between an aluminium chassis and a plastic chassis. So this is two different chassis, as you can see. This is plastic and this is aluminium. The thing about an aluminium chassis, this is a car that we've actually converted from plastic to aluminium. You can see how beautiful this looks with the aluminium on there. It really does look nice. But I find downsides towards aluminium. When I upgrade into an aluminium chassis, all I really have is a plate of steel. You know, probably about 3 mil thick. But when you look at a plastic chassis, you can see it might be the same thickness. But when you actually look at the rigidity of a plastic chassis, it's a lot stronger. There's less chances of this bending, flexing when you put power into it. Now, I'll show you an aluminium chassis that we have. This was the same chassis as this. Let me put it this away. See, same chassis as this. This had a hit, and look at the difference. You can see it's twisted because that side's up, that's up. And then all this has actually gone up, when technically it should have just been straight, because there should be hardly any movement there. The other downside to an aluminium chassis, as soon as you start using it, you can see the marks it leaves behind. Dents, marks, every little bit of stones gets really bad, gets really scratched up. You can feel the abrasion just up here. So if you've got an RC car that came with a plastic chassis, let me advise you, the best thing to do is to try and stick to a plastic chassis. But if you did upgrade to an aluminium chassis, you'd have to be very careful when you're driving it. You don't want to be using it as a bashing thing like we did with this. We were testing it to see how strong an aluminium chassis really is, and we found out that on a crash, the damage was far higher on an aluminium chassis than we would have had on a plastic chassis. Normally, when we have a car with a plastic chassis and we have a crash like that, we might end up losing a dry shaft, or a wheel might come off, or it might break a shock absorber. I mean, but on this, the damage was so high. We had things like the speed controller and everything on here, but everything had actually moved. The motor twisted. The steering, it would not even turn anymore, because you can see that's where the steering sits, just back here. But when all this was twisted, same goes for the brakes at the top, that twisted as well. Whereas on a plastic chassis, even if you were to have a head on, there's a lot of rigidity, there's a lot of things on there to keep the chassis from bending, flexing, breaking. They do break, because that's what they're going to do eventually. Everything has to break, everything's got a maximum to it, and same goes for plastic chassis. I mean, they don't, to be honest, they don't look nice, but if I wasn't very good at driving, then I'd probably be choosing a plastic chassis over an aluminium chassis. And that's what my video is all about today, to let you know that if you've got a plastic chassis, try and stick to it. If you're really good at driving and you're not bothered about replacing chassis, there's nothing wrong in upgrading. But once it's upgraded, just look at how beautiful a car looks with an aluminium chassis. Let me turn it around. You can see how the motor and the servo and everything sits on there. It's just lovely. Oil-filled shocks. You can see how the shocks are. You could even match the shocks to the chassis, which is what we are going to do later on. We're going to get gold shocks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like my videos.